Hi guys, hope you all doing well. Welcome back to our series of Microsoft Graph, and in this video we are going to talk about group objects. Now if you're watching the series from the beginning, in the last video we have discussed about Microsoft Graph Delta endpoints, the endpoints that can be used to query the changes that are implemented for a specific resource type or for a specific object. Whereas the agenda of this video will be knowing how to use Microsoft Graph API to query group information. There will be three different applications that I will be using in this particular video, and they are Microsoft Graph Explorer, PowerShell, and Postman. We'll talk about the endpoints that you need to access to query group information, how you can check the metadata that is associated with group type object, and what all permissions you need to query this API. Then we'll talk about list of all the attributes that belongs to group object and what are related objects. Lastly, we'll talk about how you can use Delta endpoints to query group objects or the changes that are implemented for a specific group. Now, since we are talking about PowerShell automation and API, I will be sharing a script that you can use and that will take input from a CSV file to create group objects. Now to begin with, it will be absolutely perfect that if you already know how Azure Active Directory group works, because the scope of this video is not to let you know how group works, instead how you can use Microsoft Graph API to query group information. But if by any chance you want to know how Azure Active Directory group works, then you can go ahead and check this playlist and watch this video, which is Azure Active Directory groups. Now let's begin by knowing the endpoints and how to query metadata of group object. Since we know that there are two versions of APIs available as of now, the first one is v1.0 and the other one is beta endpoint. So what you can do is you can just add this particular keyword which is called group, and then you will be able to access group information. For metadata, the URL remains same and it will remain same for all the object types. Now let me switch to my browser and show you what exactly I'm referring to. So if you go to this particular link, which is graph.microsoft.com /v1.0, then metadata, you can actually get the list of all the attributes that belongs to group object as well as the list of related objects. And the information is same when you go to beta endpoint. There can be some changes when it comes to the list of attributes because it's obvious that beta endpoint will have more information as compared to that of v1.0. But Microsoft will always recommend you to use v1.0 endpoints because beta endpoints are subjected to change. That means they can implement a change for which you will not be notified. So these are the two URLs which you can access, and all you have to do is you have to search for this keyword called entity type name equal to group. That's all you have to do and you will get the relative information. Okay, so now let's go to Graph Explorer and see how things work. Okay, so as of now I'm signed in with my global admin account, and as you can see, this is the first link which I tried accessing, which is graph.microsoft.com /beta /groups. Now, the moment I will do run query or I will click on run query, I will get a response that will list all the groups that exist in my Azure Active Directory. As of now, just ignore this particular section because this is something which I will be covering in a lot more detail when we'll talk about pagination. Okay. So as of now, all the groups that exist in my directory are getting listed, but there is a certain limit. Since there are many groups that exist in my Azure Active Directory, not all the groups data will be sent in the response, and that's the purpose of this particular link. Okay. So now let's say I want to get more organized information. What I can do is I can simply use select query, wherein I can say only show me the ID and display name. And let's see what I will get in the results. And as you can see, now I'm only getting the ID and display name of my groups. Now, if you will go to this particular endpoint, which is groups, you will get the list of all the groups that exist in your particular Azure Active Directory. But the fact is that let's say you want to query one specific group, then all you need to do is you have to copy this object ID, go to the same URL and just add this value with a forward slash. That's it. Now I'm only getting one particular group listed in the response. So this is how you can query all the groups and one specific group. Now, when it comes to updating, that means you want to update any attribute for a specific group altogether. Let's say I want to update the description value for this particular group. All you have to do is you have to select this particular method, which is patch, and then send the value that you want to update. Okay, so let's say instead of automate research, I want to name it as, let's say, PowerShell research. Okay, PowerShell research. And if I will now click on run query, then what will happen? This attribute will get updated. And as you can see, the value has been updated. So now if I go ahead and get the same group again, what I will get is PowerShell research. So patch is the kind of operation that you can apply, or is a kind of method that you can apply to update attributes. Now, not all the attributes will be updated because some are constructed the moment you create a group object. For on-prem group object, you will not be able to update attributes from here because they are getting synced from on-prem, from your on-prem Active Directory. Okay, so you have to be very specific that what kind of method you are applying and whether that object type is capable enough to get that action applied or not. So let's say if I want to change a specific attributes that is getting synced from on-prem through Microsoft Graph, I will not be able to do that. Okay, it's very simple. Now we have covered get, we have covered list, we have covered update. For delete, the process is exceptionally simple. All you have to do is you have to navigate to this particular group with the group ID, and here just select delete and click on run query. That's it, your group will be deleted. So now if I query the same group again, I should not get any results. And that's all you can see here. Okay, and the response body, it is showing me that this particular resource does not even exist in Azure Active Directory. Now with groups, it's not always about querying and updating the information for a group object itself, but the fact is that a group object can have members, and members can be group objects itself, users, or devices, right? So let's say, okay, so this particular group is deleted. That should not query the members of this particular group. Let's again run one specific query for a specific group, and let's try to check the members of this particular group. Okay, for that you have to add keyword called members. Okay, now why I'm saying keyword members, or from where I came to know about this information, is the metadata. As you can see, for group object, one of the navigation property is members. So if I'll go to members, I'll get all the users or all the objects that exist as a member in this particular group. But if I go to member of, then what I will get is the list of all the other groups where this particular group exists as a member. Okay, so now if I do run query, as you can see, as of now, there is no user who is a part of this particular group. There are no members that exist in this particular group. Now, when it comes to adding members, the process is slightly different because there is a specific request body that needs to be added, and that is this particular section. Now, let me explain you what exactly happening as of now. We are going to this particular endpoint, the members endpoint, and we are saying that this is the object that you have to add. But the fact is that, as you can see here, we are mentioning directory object instead of an object type. Now the reason behind that is a group can contain a user object or a device object or a group itself, right? So that's the reason why you can simply mention directory objects instead of mentioning a specific object type. But that doesn't mean that if you will add the values with object type, it will not be accepted, This is something which is also be accepted, but this is something which Microsoft recommends, or I can say officially documented by Microsoft. Okay. But there is one more information that you have to add at the end, and that is the reference for this particular object. Now, if you want to know more about what does this keyword means, then you can go ahead and read this particular article where it says what is the purpose of using reference as a keyword. Now I'll come back to Graph Explorer and then I'll run this query. But the fact is that it's a change that we are implementing, right? So now we have to do post instead of get. And the moment I will do run query, as you can see, this particular member is added. So now if I remove this particular section and instead of post, I will do get. As you can see, one of the user is added in this particular group. Now there is one more very important fundamental which you must know in terms of accessing information through APIs, and that is this permission tab. Now whenever you will use Graph Explorer, you can click on this particular button and you'll come to know which permission is required. But when it comes to using Postman and when it comes to using, let's say, client credential flow, then you have to explicitly grant the permissions to your application. Now, how to do that? There is a video that already exists in the channel. You can go ahead and watch that video first. I will be sharing the link in the description. But just to give you a brief background how you will do it with Postman. So all you have to do now is you have to go to this particular link, which is group, and all the links which I will be showing in this particular video through Graph Explorer, you can use any of them in this particular section. Request a new access token, use client credential flow or authorization cloud flow, whichever you want to use. And then once you have the appropriate access token, you can actually click on send, and then you will get the information. So as of now, I have received an access token which I will be using in Postman, and the moment I will click on send, as you can see, now I'm getting the group information. So how to use Postman with Microsoft Graph API? There's already a video as I've addressed before. I will be sharing the link in the description section, which you can review and work on it as required. Okay. Now let's understand the same with the help of tech, or what exactly we did. As of now, we have added a member to a group object and we used this particular request, wherein we have mentioned directory objects instead of object type. Now the reason behind that is a group can have a group itself as a member, a user object, or a device. But that doesn't mean that you cannot use the actual name in context. You can use it. You can use user, you can use group, or you can use devices. But this is something which is officially documented by Microsoft. Now there is one more feature that exists or that belongs to group object, and that is nested members or transitive members. Now, as I've said before, that a group can itself have a group, and this particular group will have members. But the fact is that if I will access this particular group, then I will not be able to get the list of the users that exist in this particular group. But there is a way to get the flat list of all the members that belongs to a particular group altogether. Let me explain this with the help of portal.azure.com, and things will make more sense. So as of now, I'm going to portal.azure.com and I will be showing you two different groups, and I will let you know which group member we will be querying by transitive endpoint. Okay. So if I'll go to Azure Active Directory and if I'll go to groups, there are two groups that exist as of now for which I will be using as a reference in this particular demonstration. So I'll show you the first one, which is transitive. Now this is the group that is getting synced from on-prem to Azure Active Directory. Now it has certain members, likewise PIM, SSO, user23 and user25. Okay, but this group itself is a member of a different group called dev thread. Okay, and as you can see, if I go to members, then SSO and PIM, these two users are not getting listed over here. Instead, transitive group is getting listed as a member. Okay, so let's say if I go to this particular group, or if I try to check the members of this particular group through Graph Explorer, the expected behavior is I will not get PIM and SSO listed over here. Okay, so if I'll do run query, I will get the list of all the group members, but let's make our results more organized. Let's only query ID and display name. Okay, so that we can review the list quickly. So as you can see, this is the group which I have accessed, and PIM and SSO, they are not getting listed over here. Instead, the transitive group is getting listed. And as you can see, the type is Microsoft.graph.group. Okay. Now let's say I want to access transitive members, or I want to check the nested membership. Then all I have to do is now I have to go to transitive members endpoint. The fact is that how do I know this? Because this is something which is mentioned in the metadata itself. So if you know how to read metadata and if you know how to relate things, it will be absolutely perfect, and Microsoft Graph will become super duper easy for you to query any set of information. Okay. So now again, we'll customize the results. Let's say select equal to ID, comma, display name. Okay. Now the expected behavior is that SSO as well as PIM should get listed in this particular result. And as you can see, PIM is getting listed. Transitive group is also getting listed, but the fact is that all the members of this particular group, which is transitive, is also getting listed over here. Okay. So this is how you can use the transitive member endpoint to query all the information. Now let's talk about how to use Delta endpoints for group object. Now, since we already know that the purpose of Delta endpoints is to list down all the changes when it comes to new objects getting created, or any object getting updated, or any object getting deleted. The fact is that the endpoint link is exceptionally simple. It's the same one which we used with users. The fact is that all you have to do is you have to add this particular keyword at the end, and the Delta links will be created for you. So if I go to my Graph Explorer and if I simply access this particular link, a Delta endpoint will be created. And as you can see that I am getting a Delta link created for this particular request that I have sent. Now the fact is that next time I can use the same link and access some set of information or access the changes which are implemented for groups. But when it comes to performance, or you may have a specific use case wherein you want to track all the groups all together, but the fact is that what I have seen, usually these kind of changes are implemented object specific. So how to query object specific change or how to query group specific change with Delta endpoints, all you have to do is you have to add a filter query. Now this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to add, or I'm going to access Delta endpoints, but what I will say that only give me the result of this particular object. Okay, so if I copy this particular value and if I go here and if I'll do run query, I should get a Delta link created for one specific object. Okay, and as you can see, this object is named as PowerShell group 30, and the object ID starts from 01AAE. Okay, but the fact is that just for this particular group, there is a Delta link which exists now, and next time when I want to query the changes, I can just access this particular endpoint, and that's it. I will get all the results. As of now, the value context is null because we have not made any changes, right? So from a Delta endpoint perspective, it's absolutely simple. If you want to query the entire group type, then add just Delta. And if you want to query or if you want to filter a specific object, all you have to do is you have to provide the ID of that particular object. As of now, this is the only attribute which is supported with filter, but for sure in future, more attributes will be added or more attributes can be used to apply filter query. The last thing which is left now is the process of creation of groups. Okay. Now, as I've said before, that when you are sending a post request, there is a lot more content which you have to add, and this is the template that you have to follow for creating group object. Now, if you will mention unified, then Microsoft 365 group will be created. But let's say you are not mentioning any information in this particular section. That means instead of unified, you're just leaving this field blank. Then in this case, a security enabled group will be created. Okay, so let's come back to Graph Explorer and let's try creating a particular group from the Explorer itself, and then we'll talk about the script, the last section of this particular video. Okay, so I'm going to name this particular group as, let's say, Graph Automate. Okay, and as you can see, I have mentioned already unified. That means M365 group will be created. Okay, and let's name, or let's give mail nickname the value which is Graph Automate again. And now let's send this to post. Let's change these endpoints. Let's remove this section and click on run query. And as you can see, a new group object is created for me. Now let me show you guys the script which I will be adding in the description section and that you can use to create group from a CSV file. Okay. So this is a very simple script which I have written, but the idea behind this is to make you guys understand how you can write your own custom scripts. You will for sure write better scripts than me, but this is just an overview how to use different concepts altogether. Okay. So I'll tell you the purpose of this particular script and then I will explain what exactly this script is going to do. This is my CSV file which has the list of groups that needs to be created. Okay, but if you try to see this particular structure, it's the same which we were discussing in our deck. Okay, so this is the description, this is the display name, this is the value whether the group should be mail enabled or not, this is mail nickname, and this is security enabled set to true. Now this value that you see here is the owner of a specific group altogether. Okay, now what my script is doing initially, that it will ask for a tenant name, it will request a token. If by any chance we don't get an access token in response, this script will exit. But if we get the token, then the CSV gets imported, and it has been structured in a way so that all the appropriate values get included in the body section of the first request that needs to be sent for the creation of group. And this is the particular section which will get the group created for you. Now, if you guys remember, in order to add a group owner, you need the object ID. Okay, so this section is actually going to query the object ID of the owner. And at this particular section, if you guys pay close attention, the same thing which we are talking about, at this particular section, the owner will be added. Okay, so this is exactly what's going to happen in this particular script altogether. So let me switch to PowerShell and show you guys how this script behaves. Okay, so now if I go and run this particular script, which says creation of groups, it is asking me for my tenant name, and I will do conceptswork.com, and as you can see, all these groups are getting created, adding owner to the respective group altogether, and this is how this script is going to work. Now, if you really want to know each and every concept that I have used in this particular script altogether, then in that case, what you can do, you can join the membership of our channel, because there is a playlist which I have initiated recently where I keep on posting content in terms of how I created a particular script altogether. So now let's talk about a quick summary of what all we have discussed in this particular video. We have discussed about the APIs that you need to access to query group information, what are the permissions, endpoint, and metadata that you can refer to, list of all the attributes, related objects, how to query them, delta endpoints, and delta query for groups. And lastly, we have discussed about a script, which I will be sharing in the description section. In the next video, we are going to talk about advanced query from Microsoft. So if you guys are learning something new, please feel free to subscribe. And if you think that this channel is helping you to learn something new, please feel free to share this video with your technical community. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.